Thank you, Carly. Hi, AMC family. I'm a brown-skinned Black woman that has lock petals with cute bangs and brown hair with a silver nose ring and purple lipstick. I'm Lauren Williams-Baptiste, the network director for the Internames Network. The Internames Network is a national network of organizations, campaigns, and individuals working to end police violence against Black women, girls, trans, and gender nonconforming people. Our four main areas of work are documenting sexual violence by law enforcement officers stationed in and around schools through a national youth storytelling project, a research project, which you'll hear more about in just a little bit. Building responses to unmet mental health needs beyond policing, developing strategies for police accountability beyond prosecution, and building safety for Black trans women and gender nonconforming people. Our research project is a national community-based storytelling project that's focused on documenting sexual harassment and assault by police officers, school resource officers, and security guards stationed in and around schools. Over the past 2 years, we partnered with network members, Girls for Gender Equity, Black Swan Academy, Every Black Girl, and Young Women's Freedom Center to support young survivors of police sexual violence to gain and build valuable research, writing, and advocacy skills. The administrative team is led by 3 research leads, Dina Lewis, who will join us soon, Dr. Connie Woon, Andrea Ritchie, advisor and co-founder to the Internames Network, and research fellow resourced by the Movement for Black Lives, Chinyere Okafor, that joined the project in 2021. Everyone on the team has extensive experience in community-based research with youth. At the conclusion of the project, the findings will be disseminated to help support campaigns for police-free schools around the country. To learn more about our work, our network, and the research project, please follow us on social media using the handle at Internames, INOURNAMES, and find more information at our website, internamesnetwork.com. I want to note before we move on, a trigger warning for police violence. So if at any time during this session you need to stop and take care of yourself, please do. We also have healing justice practitioners available for support if needed. So just DM Chinyere or myself, and we'll direct you to our healing justice team. In 2015, a video showing a police officer assaulting Shakara, a young high school age Black girl, goes viral, showing a white police officer in South Carolina pull a Black teenager from her school desk and violently throw her across the floor. Healer activist Vivian Anderson uproots her life in New York to move to South Carolina to support Shakara and dismantle the system behind the assault at Spring Valley. In March, the Internames Network hosted a virtual screening of the film on these grounds and a call to action panel discussion that can be viewed, sorry, I was still sharing my volume, that can be viewed on our Facebook page. The film documents network member Vivian Anderson, founder of Every Black Girl, and her move from New York to South Carolina after the assault, and what we now know is the assault in Spring Valley. So right now we'll view the trailer and we'll then bring Vivian up and hear from her about her work, her involvement with the Internames Network, participation in the research project, and dreams for building a world where every Black girl thrives and feels safe. Let's see. Basic screen.
And even more so, we got something to teach.
Social media circulating a new video of alleged abuse by an officer. It's a little bit difficult to watch.
It was a Monday morning. I was like, yo, get your cameras, get your cameras. Shot
shocking confrontation witnessed by a classroom full of students.
It is disturbing to say the very least.
We're dealing with a generation of kids who do not respect authority.
How could they let me go to jail for that?
A girl got physically assaulted. 2 girls were arrested. Oh, wait a minute, you got criminal charges. These are 2 girls. After the assault at Spring Valley, I came here to see how I can support the girls and their families, and I'm Vivian. Schools are a microcosm of what we see in our world.
There are more layers here to uncover. What was the teacher doing? Who called the officers to the classroom? There is a context out of which this emerges.
My story was a good story because it was a white deputy and a black girl.
It's time for me to open up, and I want other kids to get their education and be safe and feel like that's not going to happen to them.
I just couldn't walk away. There's no reason that you should have been called in, period.
You're still a cop in a school. You can put an SRO on it, you can put security on it, you put whatever you want on it. You're a cop.
He would not have behaved that way if he didn't feel confident that the entire system was going to back him, which it did.
Since 2000, something like 30,000 kids were charged with disturbing schools.
It's a struggle between a school resource officer and
Slamming a student to the ground.
We're coming for all your schools next, so just get ready. I lived that moment. So when I saw that video, a lot of stuff came up for me, and I was like, no, they don't get to walk this alone. I know what it means to walk it alone. We chose these grounds because the South got something to say, and even more so, we got something to teach.
Thank you, everyone. I get chills every time I see the trailer, but without further ado, I'm going to bring Vivian Anderson, founder of Every Black Girl, up to the stage.
Hello, hello. And yes, I still get chills. So I'm taking a moment to breathe. So my name is Vivian Anderson. I'm the founder and executive director of Every Black Girl, Inc. I'm a brown scale girl who always calls myself a Black girl. Today I have 2 long braids wrapped in gold, and it reminds me of my great grandmothers who are both Native. So I'm bringing, and I have my daishiki on. So I'm bringing all my cultures into it, bringing my whole self into this conversation. Yeah, I'm like, that's a lot to digest. And what I tell folks, for those who only saw the trailer and you're gonna go and you wanna watch the full thing, don't do it by yourself, right? It's not just another movie, it's not just another thing. We're actually looking at lives, and it's not something to be like, you know, like, oh, it's a new movie. It's not that. Commercialized, that's the word I'm looking for. It's not something to be commercialized, but it's really something to internalize and say, everybody may not do what I did, but there's always work we can do. And I think that's why this project is so important. This research project is so important because we all can do something, and we can support healing and action at the same time. And I know Naima, I know she's going to talk more about what that looks like. When I started this project with the documentary, it was really to have, I saw what was happening. I was working, and I still work directly with these 2 girls, because once I'm in your life, you can't like get rid of me, praise God. So I still work with them, but what I saw happening, the whole world was telling their stories. They didn't have a space to tell their stories. They asked me, Ms. Vivian, these people want me to do this. I said, are you comfortable? And during the whole process, and I think that's what we're going to talk about later, and how this project has been moving when we talk about people who have been harmed, giving them the time to say when it's like, yes, we can go forward, and no, we have to stop. And so I think my role in the documentary, even though they talk a lot about me in the documentary, it was really to say, those were the moments when the girls were like, no, I don't want to scream today. Excuse me, because I'm still crying. They were thrust into this limelight that they didn't expect. And so how do we hold them? And also know their stories can shift the planet because their stories shifted so much. So how do we do the both and I think that was the role that I played in the documentary, making sure they were held and the story was still told, but making sure the story is told with them feeling safe and held the whole time. And I'm always open for questions, and we're gonna have that later. So that's who I am. And am I supposed to pass it to somebody?
Dina. So our next presenter is Dina Lewis, one of our lead researchers. Dina.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, my name is Dina Lewis. I use she, her pronouns. I have a purple background on Zoom. I'm a light-skinned Black woman with long curly hair. I'm wearing a black shirt, purple lipstick, 2 silver nose rings, and large round purple earrings with the image of a Black femme person on them. Before I introduce our next speaker, I want to let folks know that we do have 2 healing justice practitioners in the room, Tiffany and Naima, who are not only here to talk about the research project, but are also here and have offered support for people who are in this session with us. If you need support, please DM Chinyere or Lauren to connect you with Naima or Tiffany. And remember, one of the things about the AMC is that we're here in community. We need to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. So our next speaker, Ashley Sawyer, will be talking about the Police Free Schools campaign and giving an overview before we get into the panel discussion about the In Our Names Network specific research project. So all of the people in this room are amazing. I'm going to do brief introductions, but please know that you can find out more about them. So Ashley is a senior staff attorney at Advancement Project. She's on the Opportunity to Learn team, working to build out AP's vision of abundance and liberation for Black girls and femmes in public schools. From 2018 to 2021, Ashley was the policy director and senior director of campaigns at Girls for Gender Equity, also known as GGE, in Brooklyn, New York. Ashley developed GGE's policy and organizing infrastructure to expand opportunities and well-being for young people, especially cisgender and transgender youth of color, through city and state policies, coalition work, and legislative advocacy. So now I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Ashley Sawyer. Ashley.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. My name is Ashley. I use she and her pronouns. I am a brown-skinned Black woman. I'm wearing clear frame glasses, a bright yellow collared shirt, and a print hair bow ribbon scarf thing, and a Afro puff. I am excited to talk about Police Free Schools, even in a conversation that is heavy and difficult, because I get to talk about where we're going and what we're imagining and what we're visioning for the future. So Police Free Schools, just like any other aspect of abolition, is not just about the absence, as Ruth Wilson Gilmore says, it's about the presence. It is about what we are building and how we are nourishing young people, we as adult allies and young people themselves, how we are taking care of each other, and how we are building educational environments and learning communities where young people have all of the tools and resources that they could ever want to feel safe, affirmed, and welcome in their school environment. And we believe that police presence is the antithesis to young people feeling whole, supported, well, and affirmed, and able to learn and think critically and imagine the futures that they want. We know the story from Spring Valley And unfortunately, there are many, many other stories of young people who went to school expecting to be cared for and supported, and instead were assaulted by police at their schools. And of the stories that we know, there are many stories that we don't know anything about because the young person didn't know where to turn or have a person or a group of people that they could go to for support or care. So this is an ongoing problem. And what happened at Spring Valley in South Carolina is just one of, unfortunately, many. I'm dropping into the chat, and I know it will be shared again, the link to the Advancement Project Police Free Schools website, but in particular to our map. And it's called the #AssaultAtMap. And I want to name that it is triggering because as you follow through the map, you can click on different states and cities and see some of the incidents where students were harmed or assaulted by school cops in the state that you live in. And when you read the articles and you see the photos and you learn more, it should disturb you because it disturbs me. And those young people are still living with the harm that was caused to them. And so the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools is organized by the Alliance for Educational Justice and Advancement Project. And we try our best to bring together youth organizers from across the country who are working on local campaigns to dismantle the policing apparatuses in their state. And so in some places like Los Angeles, they've seen amazing wins where they have been able to, for example, get their local school police department to return a grenade launcher and military grade weapons that they received from the federal government. Now you can ask yourself, why does the Los Angeles Unified School District need a grenade launcher? But those organizers were the ones who were able to get rid of that infrastructure. We can look at BOP, Black Organizing Project in Oakland, California. They've also been able to successfully organize wins. We can look to cities across the country where people are day in and day out chipping away at the surveillance, criminalization, and violence done by school policing and school policing structure. I really hope that folks will take some time at the end of this conversation to look at our toolkit. Thank you for dropping it in the chat, where you can learn how you can build a campaign or support campaigns that already exist to dismantle school policing in your local area and see the amazing work that's already been done. We have been organizing for a long, long time. People in communities of color have been working to dismantle criminalization in their schools for a long time. This isn't a new movement, but it is a movement that got new energy after the 2020 uprisings. And we hope to continue that momentum despite the fear mongering that we're facing even in this moment. We know that police do not keep us safe. They don't keep young people safe. And we know, in fact, not only do they not keep us safe, but they often assault young people and sexually assault young people and do all sorts of intimidation and surveillance. And young people deserve to feel free, loved, cared for, and affirmed in their academic environments and to create the kind of schooling and learning that they want and need. And so I just hope that at the end of this, folks will decide to plug in and think about how you can support and get involved in this movement.
Great, thank you, Ashley. This is Dina speaking. So before I introduce the panelists, I want to give a brief idea of the motivations for this research project. Now, you have already heard about some of the motivations and you've seen some of the motivations. And I want to talk a little bit more about why this research project exists. So the In Our Names Network research project on police sexual violence, as Lauren said, is to document this invisibilized sexual violence by police writ large in schools and around schools. So police, security officers, school resource officers, and other law enforcement. We use the 2021 Shrouded in Silence report to define police sexual violence as, quote, any act taking advantage of police authority and power to engage in sexually harassing, degrading, discriminatory, violative, or violent acts, end quote. And we'll drop a link to that in the chat. Another motivation is that we also know this type of project will support the police-free school campaigns across the United States. Again, as Ashley mentioned, you can go to policefreeschools.org to see the hashtag assault at map that shows almost 200 acts of school police violence against BIPOC students since 2007. And as a reminder, a large percentage of those recorded assaults involve sexual violence. We'll drop that link again in the chat too. And when you search for the hashtag assault at on social media to learn more about the stories, stats, and the actions folks are taking to stop police violence in schools, we hope you begin to understand how our research on sexual violence, police sexual violence, will add to this fight. And I want to just highlight two stats that show how important our research is. First, from a book by Walker and Ehrbeck in 2003, they found that 40% of cases of police sexual violence reported in the media in a single year involved teenagers and police youth engagement programs. I want to point out that that is just reported in the media. That's not representative of other reported or actually non-reported assaults overall. Second, from In Our Names Network co-founder Andrea Ritchie, in her 2017 book titled Invisible No More, Police Violence Against Black Women and Women of Color, out of the many sexual misconduct acts law officials were caught in, more than 70% of cases involved motorists, crime victims, informants, students, and young people in job shadowing programs. So what we're seeing with police sexual violence is that they're targeting folks who are most vulnerable. Now, with that brief introduction to our motivations behind our research, I really want to hope that you understand the necessity of uncovering this type of violence, holding people, police accountable and responsible for this type of violence, and ultimately ending this type of violence. So I'm going to bring to the stage, or the Zoom boxes, our amazing panelists. Now I'm going to do brief introductions that will not do them justice, not the justice they deserve. Please know that they could each have their own panel, their own conference on the work that they do for liberation. First is Vivian Anderson, and as you know and saw, she is the founder and executive director of Every Black Girl Incorporated. And Vivian's work is rooted in promoting health and well-being of youth, families, and communities of color. Every Black Girl, located in South Carolina, is a national campaign and program that centers and supports Black girls. Chanel Goss is a researcher within Our Names Network. Chanel is a Columbia College graduate with a bachelor's in communication. She focuses on diversity and inclusion with the hopes to sustain community events and social support within minority neighborhoods. After graduating, she joined the nonprofit organization Every Black Girl Incorporated as a youth specialist, encouraging self-esteem and character development in young women of color. Welcome to Vivian and Chanel. Tony Wilson, Director of Culture and Narrative Shift at Girls for Gender Equity, or GGE, is a social worker, organizer, spiritualist, plus-size influencer, fat liberationist, and Black feminist from Brooklyn with roots in Jamaica. She grounds her work at the intersections of race, gender, class, sexuality, body, and culture. Through youth work, organizing, creative media, and writing, Tony uses her radical imagination to envision a world where everyone believes in the promise of Black girls. So welcome, Tony. Naima Afia is a healing justice practitioner and a decolonial holistic health counselor, yoga instructor, doula, I said healing justice practitioner, and a community activist. Within Naima's work, Naima applies a radically integrated therapeutic approach that is informed by activism, esotericism, liberation psychology, and ancestral wisdom. Naima provides trauma-focused counseling through her private practice in community-based settings with a dedicated focus on the trauma of oppression. Tiffany Illinois Jones is also a healing justice practitioner. Tiffany is an abolitionist educator, artist, and healer as well. Her life commitment is to root all that she does in TLC, tender love and care, to expand our collective capacity to TLC, teach, learn, change, /create, /challenge, toward a world of our most liberated imaginations. She studied graphic design and received a BA in graphic communications. And while in college, she was an apprentice assistant to doll and textile artist Adrienne McDonald, in which she learned the art of cloth doll making and began Love Mama Dolls in 2001. Currently, Tiffany is an art teacher in the New York City public school systems. Sion Dubose is a youth researcher within Our Names Network and is part of Black Swan Academy. Sion is a 20-year-old native Washingtonian. They graduated from Idea Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. in 2020. They have been a youth advocate for 8 years, starting in the 7th grade with the Black Swan Academy, where they still organize. As a catalyst for change, Sion has organized panels, town halls, workshops, and Sion has helped get the DC Council to fund the NEAR Act to increase mental health support in schools. Also passed legislation to gradually remove SROs, school resource officers, from DC schools by 2025, and passed the Fair Access to School Act. And again, I want to bring Ashley back. And as you know, and as you heard, Ashley is senior staff attorney at Advancement Project. So if we can get a Zoom round of applause, which means a bunch of Zoom reactions for folks, some claps, some snaps, however you want to do it. I'm beyond excited to see you all again. It's been a few months, hopefully as restful as possible, even while the world is doing some not great things around us. And I have a number of questions for people. And I'm going to start with Sion and Chanel. And Sion, and then Chanel. Sion, what surprised you about this work? So what surprised you about doing this type of research?
What surprised me about doing this type of research is like the amount of time you have to put into it, but also the amount of time you will have to like take away, like that you would need, like space and time you would need, like it takes a lot out of you, and I didn't realize it would take so much out of you doing this type of research. So yeah.
Thanks for that. And hopefully when we talk to Tiffany and Naima, we can talk more about how the research takes things out of you and how we can get things put back in, filled back up too. Chanel, what are your thoughts?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chanel. I am a brown-skinned girl. And I was most surprised in this research by the ability to actually create something with people who lived all over the world. This project was a national project. We've never seen each other before. We've never met in person, yet we were able to create something tangible and something good. And that was just so amazing to me. That surprised me the most.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did not mention that this work, we're all in different time zones for the most part. We're coming together mainly on Zoom, sometimes Signal, and we put something together that's really powerful. So thank you for reminding me, Chanel. I want to talk with Tony and Ashley. I have a question for you. Actually, I have a couple of questions for you, as you can see in our run of show. So Tony, tell me more about your role in this project.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Wilson. I am also a Black girl, a light-skinned Black girl with blonde locks and a pipe cleaner style. So I have like a bang and a bun and a little bit of backdrop in the back of my hair. And my support role for this project has really been to be a support system for the youth researchers. So coming into this project, I had the wonderful task of recruiting and outreaching to some of GGE's youth organizers who would be interested in leading this work alongside of us. So a lot of what Chanel said also, so being able to support young people who I also haven't met in the physical world yet, but through Zoom. So having them also trust me to guide them through this project while they, take on this leadership role. So a lot of my role in this project has been talking through different stages of the project with the youth researchers, engaging in any additional political education they might have needed outside of the weekly meetings. I know sometimes young people aren't comfortable in larger spaces saying what they understand or what they don't understand. So being able to set up those one-on-one meetings with them to walk them through any questions they might have had. And also identifying that while we're doing this project, they're also living their lives, experiencing several pandemics at one time, right? So connecting them to Naima for whenever they needed healing or support care in that aspect of the world that they're holding up. And then also being able to pay them, right? So this is also a process where they're receiving material, their material needs are being met. So also being able to do some of that back end payment and support for young people and arranging that for them to take care of themselves and making myself essentially an advocate for them in both the research processing space and outside of that space as well.
Great. Thanks, Tony. And you brought up so many different things that supervisors so supervisors are an integral part of this project too. It's not just the lead researchers, it's not just the researchers, it's also the supervisors. And so we're grateful to you all too. Before I go to Ashley, Vivian, can you talk about your role in the project too, please?
Yeah, so my role, and it went through many stages because when I first started, I was the researcher. I was all the things. I was a supervised researcher, brought people on. And so some stayed, some didn't, because this is hard work, right? And so making sure that I was a support, but also understanding that I learned a lot. So not just my role, if I'm going to work with young people, what are they saying? And so as the researcher came in, as Chanel was coming in, having to stop for a moment and listen to her needs. Because although this is my everyday and this is how I move, I'm like, oh, you joined, this is what you're supposed to just know. And like really being present with her so she can be present with the young people. Mm-hmm. And so my role was to make sure, are we doing everything that we're supposed to do to make sure folks are okay, making sure you don't have to always contact me. You got Naima, you got I'm trusting you to these calls because I trust you. And I think that's one of my biggest roles in life, period, to let young people and let people know you are seen and heard. And although I'm an elder, I get to learn from you. And that's what happened during this project, where it's like, I trust myself to step back, but I also have to understand that there are young people who are doing this work and still need support. So I can't just always step back. There's a step back and give back and forth, right? And so those were some of the things. So my role has been, what do you need to be whole so you can take care of the kids? And when do I need to step in because you need to step out? Real talk. Sometimes folks need to breathe. You need to step out. You can't show up. I get to step in. I get to make sure that the foundation is strong enough, the relationships are strong enough, and you trust yourself enough that, like, if you're only talking to Dina, if you're only talking to Lauren, if you're only talking to Naima, I'm okay with that because I'm very clear about the foundation that's been built. And I want you to be able to do that because I need you to transfer that to our young people. So that's been my role, like really looking at like, what's the holistic piece of all this look like? And also introducing concepts of, and we'll talk about this more, my thing around police-free schools is policing free schools. And so how I had to support to talk to parents is like, why y'all saying this? Why y'all saying that? But I'm like, your child was just assaulted by a teacher and a police officer knew about it. So did he do his role? Did she do her role? And so looking at the whole concept of policing in schools and, you know, adding all that to the conversation, because I look at all the pieces to it. Yes, we have the same officer that assaulted Shakara. His partner is in jail right now. Well, he's not in jail. They're still under investigation because he was sexually assaulting girls in school. And bringing all that to the forefront when people are like, oh, you just want to move police, but what about mass shootings? How many days are your kids going to school and police are contributing to their harm? And that's the conversation. And that's what this project has been able to give me language to broaden the conversation for all the community people, right? They may not have schools, but they have voting privileges, right? I got to be with them. And that's what my role has been here, I believe.
Thanks, Vivian. You bring up a number of great things, but also the tension between letting young people do their thing and knowing when to step in to support and trying not to do that adultist thing that we are kind of trained to do and be like, okay, I got this, I'll take this for you, right? And like letting folks struggle, letting young people struggle, but not go like just fall down flat, right? Helping at some point. And that's a tension. I hold that all the time. Ashley, so I wanted to kind of come to you last in this set of questions because I know you're not a supervisor, but you've been important in this project and the creation of the project. So can you talk more about your role, please?
Sure. I was going to say, like, I haven't done much. The supervisors, the young people researchers, they're like the ones holding this whole thing down. But as a member of the In Our Names Network, we were able at the sort of, it's been more than 2 years now almost, to start to think about how can we support young people in learning research skills that so that they can be the lead on this project, and how can we create an infrastructure and a roadmap for the type of project where young people are able to document what's been going on and to work towards the other steps in, you know, that 6 Ds that everyone talks about. But so we just were able to brainstorm and put our ideas together as a network to think about how do we best show up for young people? How do we best show up for Black-led feminist organizations also? And thinking about, you know, who should we be reaching out to in this space, in this proverbial organizing nonprofit space, who has already been making space for young people, who has already been teaching young people and working alongside them in organizing. And we were able to kind of put our heads together and think about, you know, who can we invite to join us in this journey and build on the research that already exists because of Andrea and other folks who've been in this space for a really long time. So that was my only role, is just to help think about what could this project look like and how do we make sure this project aligns with our values and our principles as like a Black feminist network. And I think my hope for the future is, you know, I made a transition from GGE that I love to now Advancement Project. And Advancement Project, we're hoping to continue to make sure that the research stays connected to the organizing network, the National Campaign for Police-Free Schools. And that, you know, in addition to documenting and researching and surfacing the information about what's happening, how are we aligning with young people to organize, to dismantle, and making sure that this project and this amazing work fits into a larger organizing effort that is working to dismantle these systems across the country and make it so that these folks can't come in contact with Black youth, queer youth, young people at all, and that young people are free to grow and blossom without any of the thorns and the ugliness that comes with policing.
Yeah, snaps. Thank you. And you said, I only did this. The visioning is so important, especially in a project like this. And so you only did a lot of work. It was different work from what the researchers were doing, but you were doing a lot of work too. And I appreciate that you mentioned the switch that you moved from GGE to advancement project, and that I'm sure you're taking Black feminist sensibilities rooted in Black girls and femmes over to advancement project. Not saying that they're not Black feminists, but everybody could be more Black feminists, right? And bringing that, that sensibility and our research with you. So I think that's amazing too. So Naima and Tiffany, you are our healing justice practitioners who signed up for this national research project and showed up for us. And I know this is AMC. I'm sure people are somewhat familiar with healing justice, but it would help to talk a little bit more about what healing justice is to you. This is a surprise question. Sorry, folks. And also what your role in this research looks like. And I'm going to start with Naima. So if you can, brief, what is healing justice for the audience? And then what does your role as a healing justice practitioner in this research, what did it look like, or what does it look like?
Thanks for that introduction. Peace, everyone. I am Naima. I am a brown-skinned female presenting Black human with salt and peppery, nappy, coily hair in a little bit of a twist-out style situation. I'm wearing an Ankara fabric jumper that has bright colors, yellows and oranges. And my background is a community altar that was co-constructed at a convening with folks who are working against violence against Black women and girls. And we can talk about community altars in another workshop or in another space, but that's the physical landscape of where I am coming from in my Zoom box. Healing justice, I guess in kind of technical language, I'm gonna bunch together some words, a lot of which come from Kindred and Southerners on New Ground, folks who have been doing this work for decades. And it's an evolving and dynamic framework that places the capacity and the right to healing back in the hands of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, the folks who are experiencing the highest and most severe marginalization. Basically, healing justice is the belief that we have everything we need, and we are everything we need, and we just need the space and the resources to activate our capacities and our powers to take care of ourselves and one another. And that it's not just something that is a nice addition, it's actually something that's necessary and is a mandate inside of liberation work, because we are not just healing ourselves in this moment, we are healing for past generations, and we are healing for generations that are to come. So that is a little bit of what healing justice is, kind of generally speaking. A lot of that language probably also came from Kara Page, so shout out to Kara Page. And for me, I think the question was what healing justice means to me or how I experience it. I experience it as relationship, which might sound trite, but as a mental health practitioner, I think it's important to name that one of the ways in which mental health conditions grow and are exacerbated and take hold in a person's life is in isolation. And one of the ways in which trauma also shows up and turns not just from an incident, but to an actual neurodivergence or mental health experience or condition or challenge. One of the ways in which that happens is that the person remains in isolation, is inhibited in being able to tell their story, to speak their truth, to be seen, and to be witnessed. And all of that needs relationship in order to happen. So a big part of what healing justice means to me is relationship. And part of that relationship is witnessing. So really seeing the person in their wholeness and in their fullness and in their humanity. and affirming that and making that visible to not just myself, but to the other folks who are part of the community surrounding that person, and encouraging that person to do the same and to walk in that. Providing resources for the person to take up their own healing practices, to reconnect to whatever feels like their spiritual walk or lineage or calling. Basically, I always say I'm in the business of putting myself out of business. You know, I really want people to feel like the power and capacities have been restored to their hands, and that I am just a mirror holding up the reflection of all of the incredible work and miracles that they're making manifest in their lives. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what healing justice is to me. I also will say that the gift of being able to be a person who folks can turn to when dealing with trauma, when interacting with trauma, when experiencing vicarious trauma because you're reading multiple stories or you're hearing multiple narratives is truly a privilege and a blessing and a gift. And there are more people who have the capacity like myself to be able to hold some of that and to be a witness for folks. And those people are also an important part of liberation work. So shout out to all the healers and healing justice folks who are holding space and bearing witness. I want to also invite all of us to just take a few breaths here, because a big part of my work as a healing justice practitioner is slowing us down. And I feel like a big part of what I brought to this project was inviting folks to slow down so that we can really perceive and connect with the totality of our humanity. So if it's available to you, I want to ask you to find a place on your person to hold or to touch or to connect with, just to remind yourself that you're here. All of you is here, your breath, your heart, your spirit, your brilliance. And when you're ready, through the nose, just take a deep breath in. And slowly exhale it from an open mouth. We'll do that a few more times. Just breathing in softly through the nose. And taking a big breath out. And we'll do it one last time together. Breathing in through the nose. And as slow as you can, exhaling from an open mouth. And just notice if there's anywhere in your body that your awareness has turned to, and just taking a few breaths. Is there someplace on your body that needs love or attention, or care, tenderness? And offer yourself thanks for being present to this conversation and this work and this moment in the history, tristery that we are co-creating. I'm going to be complete there, and thank you all for taking a few breaths with me, and invite you to continue doing so throughout the remaining of this panel. Hopefully I didn't miss anything that I was supposed to answer. Thank you, everyone.
No, that was beautiful as per usual, and that was praxis, right? That was beautiful. Thank you. Tiffany, I'm going to turn it over to you. So again, can you tell what is healing justice to you? And talk a little bit about what your role in this research has been and will be.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Tiffany Lenoy. I am wearing a plaid printed top. I am wearing dingly earrings that are beaded in a floral pattern. I am a Black woman, fair complexion, wearing cat-eye eyeglasses and a pretty frizzy and full salt and pepper afro. I'm sitting on a Black couch with a white wall behind me. Healing justice, and I want to shout out and name Harriet's Apothecary and the collective in which Naima and I really started to begin our relationship as practitioners together. It's a collective based out of Brooklyn.
Tiffany, I'm sorry. Tiffany, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we just had a request to transition Spanish interpreters. So can we hold for just a second? And if tech support can let me know when the transition happened. Has it happened?
It is happening right now. Daniel, can you mute yourself? Okay, it should be good now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that, Tiffany. You were talking about Harriet's Apothecary.
Yes, Harriet's Apothecary. Thank you for that pause, Deanna. Harriet's Apothecary, based out of Brooklyn, but members throughout the East Coast. Harriet's Apothecary is rooted in healing justice, and it's through that work I have really come to understand that healing justice is a practice and a reminder of our humanity, and that our care is rooted in an interconnected system of community care. As a teacher who works with young folks every day, I break it down in an equation of, often we hear the terminology self-care has been coined and utilized in a very capitalistic way of like bath bombs and spas. And healing justice, as Kara Page says, is actually the opposite of that. Within the framework of healing justice is community care, and the equation is you plus me equals we, right? So I care for myself, I actualize myself, knowing that I am within intergenerational, multi-intersectionality identity framework that enables me to care for myself, as Naima said, for the past, present, and future. And when thinking about this project, when Naima told me about it, Naima was like, I cannot think of anyone else that would be so ideal with this. Also working within academia, often research, and as someone who just got their second master's and was doing research, academia and research often requests us to set aside our humanity to do the work, to be sterile in our approach to it. And working alongside all of you in this project has been a real reminder about how can we get the information we need, the stories we need, while remembering our own humanity. So what does it look like to take pause? And also, what does it look like when we interview folks and we ask them for their stories? How are we holding them? How we're creating space for them to create boundaries? So it's also for the researchers, but also for folks that we're asking questions and requiring them to tell their stories in order for us to make the changes. So it's a reminder that we are not robots, that we are not divorced from our bodies. And I think particularly for folks, for BIPOC folks, but particularly for Black folks, within the very mediocre imagination of Blackness, that humanity was not attached to it. Like Black folks made themselves Black folks, like added the people to it. So it's really important that within healing justice, in collaboration with this research, that we are reminded that we are so deserving of gentleness, compassion, and space building, as both we do the research and also stand witness to folks, but also as they stand witness to themselves. And what does that mean to create a container and to breathe and slow down?
Great, thank you so much for that. I love that both you and Naima are continuously reminding us to breathe and slow down, as you have been doing throughout the project. I am not a big grounding person. And this past 7 days, I have been either presenting at a conference, a separate conference, or facilitating a separate conference. And Naima and Tiffany have been in my head, like, Dina, breathe, stretch, be grounded. I mean, very much kinder, of course, because you're much kinder than me in my own head, but you've been with me. And so let me just do a brief, like, who I am, why I'm here. So I am, my name is Dina. I'm one of the co-lead researchers of this project with Connie One. And this project came out of a 2019 In Our Names Network gathering meeting that was held at the historical Highlander Center. And from 2019, it's been being shaped by a number of different people and organizations. In 2020, we really launched the project. In 2021, I'm pretty sure I'm getting my dates right. You know, it's like pandemic times and then the before times and the still pandemic time. So forgive me if I'm not getting the exact dates right. I do know that we'll have a beautiful digital storytelling piece on the In Our Names network to give you more information. But this brief timeline, 2021, folks came together on Zoom to do trainings on how to do research, on just getting together, how to care for yourself, how to care for others in a very radical healing justice way, as Naima and Tiffany mentioned. And we went all the way to the beginning of 2022, and then for phase 1 of the project, and then we took a much needed break, a pause. We're not done because we have phase 2 to start, which will be starting in a few months, but we needed the break to say, hey, we did a lot. We launched surveys. We had some pilot surveys go out. Folks were into the work. They learned a lot, and we needed that break. So I want to talk to Sion and Chanel. I have a question for you, a couple questions. So Chanel, tell me, since you've been involved in the project, what is one thing that you learned through conducting research that you never thought you would learn?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Chanel. I'm a brown-skinned girl with a slick back ponytail and a hoop nose ring. And the one thing that I learned that I never thought I would learn is that there's a lot of shame and guilt, and even just the mere mention of the word sex, let alone sexual assault. And I found that I had to be vulnerable in myself and open up in myself for, when I was giving out the survey, for the girls to, even be comfortable, sharing their experiences. And so I learned that, one, there's a lot of trauma around the word sex and the concept of sex in our young girls, young women of color. And that surprised me. And then I also learned that a lot of girls don't have anybody to talk to or anybody to go to about situations like that. So it's not just an isolated event. It's not just something, that happened. I thought was just my experience. It turns out to be an experience for a lot of other young girls. So that was a big learning moment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for learning to be vulnerable and being vulnerable. Sion, what are your thoughts? So what is something that you've learned through doing this research that you never thought you would learn?
Hello again. I'm a brown-skinned girl with rainbow hair and a black hoodie that I had in high school. Something that I've learned from this project is the amount of people that is actually against this, like that's against the project, that's against getting the word out. And like how easy it is for people to just put things like this behind them and act as if it hadn't happened or it don't happen. And like police are like these almighty people that can't do things like this. So like, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that battle that we're trying to wage against these people of authority who are only causing people great harm. And it's so ingrained that police are supposed to be here and they're supposed to protect us. And that's not true, right? We protect us, we hold us, we as in our communities and our collectives. Thank you for that. I don't know if Vivian or Tony, oh, there they are. Okay. couldn't see you because you weren't spotlighted. But Vivian, what, you know, you've been doing this work for a while, and we talked a little bit at the beginning about kind of every Black girl, you know, being the one in South Carolina. Can you talk about what steps you think are needed to build relationships across organizations?
Yeah, so all I do here is try to build relationships, right? Because I think a lot of times we have our campaigns, it's the voting time, and then we want to go in and say we're in relationship. I think one of the things in building relationship is making it relational, not transitional. And so really working to like, not just what they can get from us. I'm telling you, and Chanel can tell you, even before we can get a girl in the room, the amount of work we had to build relationship to even get them in the room. And we think it's something like, oh, we have a $25 gift certificate, or we have this. The relationship is that here's what's happening in my life, because I love my Naima. Y'all don't know how much I love her. She's been working with me for years. Y'all don't know that. And me doing my work first. How often are we going in communities asking them to do some work that we haven't done on ourselves? And so I knew that I had to take a moment. And sometimes people think like, oh, we ain't heard from EBG. It's not that you haven't heard from EBG. It means I have to stop and ask myself, I'm doing everything I'm not asking everybody else to do. Even with Chanel, I'm bringing her in. Am I doing the same work I'm asking her to do? And so I think as far as building relationship, I think Naima and Tiffany said it, and I love me some Harriet, because that was my first space. Y'all know that was my first space too. Are you doing the work with yourself? Are you building the relationship with yourself? So it's not about you, but it's through you. But oftentimes we step into these spaces and we make it about us. And I had to really work with that, especially somebody just talked about the resistance. I was like, why are they so against me? I realized they're not against me. They're against what's right. And if I do my work, I could still be a strong armor and a strong hold. And so those are the things that's been happening with me. And building relationships across organizations is also, this made me hard to hear, I don't know. Every organization you ain't supposed to be with. Don't mean that we dissing somebody or we yucking their yum. They not where we are, and that's okay. Everybody gets to go. We may not be on the same bus or boat. And that's the thing that lands for me as I build relationships. And I'm really looking at who's pulling for me, who's pulling and pulling, versus where are we in reciprocity? And I know I have a speech impediment, so I have to take time sometimes and say my words correctly. So where does it mean that it's the give and receive, not give and take, because that's still a negative thing. What's the give and receive? And am I in relationships where they're give and receive, or am I actually in relationships that they're actually give and take? Either they taking or am I taking, versus give and receive. And so those are the things that I've been learning, especially with the girls, because these young people will tell you all day, every day. They will get you correct all day, every day. And as an elder, I get to stop and say, am I being righteous and want to be right, or am I looking to do right? And if I'm looking to do right, I get to hear them and they get to guide me. And it ain't mean that I'm stupid or this or that. They get to lead sometimes, and I create the spaces for them to lead. And so that's how I've been working with building partnership throughout organizations.
Thank you. I'm saving the transcript because I love the give and receive. I love the validation of not everybody's with you, and that's okay, that we might be on different buses or boats or whatever, but we're going to get there. Tony, what are your thoughts? So what steps do you think are needed to build relationships across orgs?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. Thanks for asking, Dina. When I think about it, I think it's a lot of what Vivian shared. When I'm thinking also about this project, what came to my mind was setting up time for us to also be in like honest, transparent community with each other. I think a lot of what Naima said earlier is that sometimes we're like so really deeply into the work that things just keep on moving, and then they're moving, they're spiraling, they're moving really quickly and fast. And it takes it's a really hard time for us to push pause, take those steps back, and really get to know each other on a more communal level that's not embedded in our work, if that makes sense. And I know oftentimes Joanne, who's the founder of GGE, she says that we come to the work because we are the work. So it's really hard for us to then try to separate those. But in my experience, doing this work and just like doing organizing work in general, when I have more time to get to know the people that I'm working alongside, whether it's young people, other organizations, on a more familial and communal basis, I then believe that it strengthens our work together, because I also see community organizing as something that is deeply spiritual, and I can't really disconnect them because they are so much connected together. So having that time to familiarize ourselves with each other, with who we are, what brings us to the work, with what people's needs are, their accessibility needs. I think that is really where we begin to ground ourselves in both relationship, community, and gives us a stronger synergy and power to then move work forward and mobilize our communities and our peers. So I think that's like a number one for me in doing this work and organizing work in general.
And here I go again. And Tony, thank you so much for that, because I know I'm so comfortable here because we've had those moments, right? I can talk about Ashley, I can talk about Naima, I can talk about Dina, I can talk about Chanel. It's not, oh, we just all coming together and we going like, we actually did work and work and work and building relationship before we actually started working together. And so that was so powerful what you just said, because I think what this work taught me, and I had girls who were going like this, right? Where was it missing from this level? What were they doing? What were we creating? And so when you brought that back, I'm very clear. I'm about to organize another girls' trip with the girls so they can be with each other before we tell them to go out and be with the rest of the world. And that's what GGE taught me too. So I'm giving all my shout outs. I love y'all.
I love that too. And I just want to remind folks, we're in a pandemic. In a pandemic, through the screen, we were able to build and continue to build relationships. I mean, Sion will hit me on Signal. I'll hit them back. Sion will send me a message. Sorry, I don't want to use violent language. Sion will send me a message via the Signal app, and I will then send a message back, or people will email, or I'm like, hey, I have this job opportunity. What do you think? And, so I really appreciate that too. Ashley, so what are your thoughts here? What are your thoughts about connecting with orgs?
I think Ms. Vivian said a lot of what I was thinking, but we are all in an ecosystem together. Many of the organizations that are tapped into this work and that are brave enough, like Sion said, to engage in this conversation that some folks are very uncomfortable with, we are like working with one another constantly. We're sharing information, we're building together. And I think that has actually been the thing that keeps the network going, is the fact that so many of us already know each other and have done some of the work to build personal and deep connections with one another. And I'm hoping that for young people, and I haven't been able to spend as much time with young people, or really any time with young people, because of the pandemic, because, I'm a little bit away from youth work, but I'm hoping that young people are also able to tap into or create a network amongst themselves, right? Like to be each other's support and to eventually be building the systems, and it doesn't have to be within the nonprofit infrastructure, but like building the structures to challenge the oppression that they experience in and around school, and in and around policing and criminalization. So I'm hoping I'm understanding the question correctly, but yeah, I think that's what I'm hoping for.
You understood. Folks here are just getting the assignment. It's a TikTok thing. Thank you all for that. Tiffany and Naima. So Tiffany, you talked about a little bit about, academia and research. And so my question is, and you spoke a little bit to this, but what does it mean to, what does it mean for research spaces to bridge connections to healing and spirituality, or really like, what does it mean that when organizations or groups think about research and the connection to healing justice or other types of healing modalities? And then Naima, I'll ask you.
That is such a good question. Thank you for that. I was sitting here thinking about what has been going on while we have all together, right? So I'm a teacher. I'm a full-time New York City public school teacher. We just ended the school year. I am crispy, not straight up burnt out, but I'm definitely crispy. And as I sit here and I remember like, oh my goodness, young folks, many of which we're interviewing, I'll just speak for New York City alone, on which one of the researchers was in New York City in a public school. For many young folks, it was their first time in a year and a half being physically in a building again, right? Teachers just beginning to like understand, how do I support young folks who have like lost their families, lost their households, have become primary caregivers in their homes? What does it mean to do to acknowledge the urgency of what we're researching while considering who's doing it, both those who are generating the questions and the forms, and both those who are giving the stories, who are existing in this context. I would not be able to take all of that into consideration if I was not coming out of a humanizing framework that required me to think about the totality of who, to even ask the question who, as opposed to what, right? Often in academia, it's like, what are we researching and why are we doing it? Rather than who, right? How, when, is the urgency of the work going to surpass the urgency of us being in relationship with each other? Is it going to surpass us breathing? I'm the opposite of Ashley. I work with young folks every day, and I can say that all of us are in this flux. And healing justice, and having a simple framework of care and love, and I see you, requires us to ask questions and to take each other's presumed stories in consideration, but to really see the context. Like, what is actually happening that's impacting this very human lived experience of mine that may encourage or require me to slow down as I do this very important work. And I'll just end with, to move with intention sometimes requires us to slow down. It does not remove the urgency of what information will give us and how it will shape how schools are being functioned. But just imagine the power of this work and how it comes from a whole place.
Thank you so much for that. Folks are really coming with it today. I love it. And I love the not only researching who, but researching with, right? I think that researchers and academia also removes the ability to be looked at. So we're looking at people and not allowing them to look back at us, right? And going hand in hand with people is really the way to go. Naima, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are very similar to what Tiffany very beautifully articulated. I think what having healing justice as a part of research and this particular work means is that the work gets to continue, right? I think so often the work gets interrupted because people go past crispy and get burnt out and actually get into a space where they are not at their best functioning or are not well. And we not only lose the work, but we lose sometimes the people who are holding the work. So having healing justice as a component of this for me means that the work gets to continue and not just continue indefinitely or for the sake of completion, but it gets to continue in integrity, right? Because as Tiffany said, when we slow down, we get to really be in choice. And if we're not moving slow and if we're not moving with intention, there's a chance that we're not moving with our true agency intact. And as folks who are experiencing trauma on multiple levels at all times, if we are not moving slow, we are not acknowledging the trauma and the impact that it's having on us, and we're not giving ourselves time and space and grace to reclaim our agency and our choice, to reconnect our consciousness to our physical being and our intellect. So that to me is a huge piece of what healing justice means and how it shows up. It also means we get to be multiplicitous in how we engage with liberation work. We don't have to do things any one way, because if we're helping people get free, we're making an impact and we're doing what we came to do, right? And so helping someone get free might be sitting with them while they take a few breaths. And that survey question can maybe come a little bit later or on another day, but them breathing is their freedom that day. And that is so beautiful and so important, and the work needs to have multiplicity. I just think it means the ability to slow down, the ability to see ourselves, as Vivian said, the ability to see one another, the ability to acknowledge, recognize, and take into consideration the amount of trauma that we are holding, that we have been holding, that we continue to experience, and the impact that it has on us, and not make that small and make that something that has to get put away or dismissed from the ways in which we are creating. So just considering that our wholeness also includes pain and anguish and things that need tenderness and time. So I think that I'll be complete there.
Thank you, Naima. That was wonderful. I really actually wanted to add to that real quick from a researcher's perspective. I think the healing justice practitioners did a really good job of also explaining the why of this project. Because if we're all walking around with these yucky feelings and we're all walking around feeling unsafe, then why not hold each other? You know, why not be able to come in community and be able to support each other in that way? And that was really emphasized through like taking that pause and being in connection with each other. And so now I know how to go into my community and hold that space for other people. So that was really huge. That was really big.
Yeah, thank you. I love being filled and I always get filled when I'm in these spaces. And I wanted to lend to urgency. The urgency of now is not desperation or crisis. So our slowdown is actually us understanding the urgency of now, that every movement that we make is for a longer vision. It's for the longer vision. So our urgency of now will have every move we make be for the longer outcome, which means sometimes I have to stop. I have to slow down because I'm on a longer focus versus I have to just respond to this crisis in this moment right now. Desperation, urgency are not the same conversation. Mm-hmm. I believe the work has been the urgency of now. We know we have to dismantle this system. It has to end. How we move in it is our urgency of now. Because I want Naima here with me for the long haul. But if she don't stop, what we doing and then what we teaching. if we don't say it's okay, because then we replicate everything we say and we're trying to dismantle. So being clear that one of the things that happened in this project, and I'm like, we're gonna tell the truth, right? We stopped. It had a timeline. It was supposed to be done. It was supposed to be all these things. But because we understand this is more, it's a long-term goal that we about, we trusted each other and ourselves in this work enough to say, we're gonna have to put a pause on it because, oh, we done brought all these folks in. We're listening to the healers. They telling y'all gonna need to be with these people. Y'all may need to look at, are you just pushing academia? Or are you actually looking at the work? And we stopped. Grace and space for us to be here doing this work on a long term and have the impact for the people and the young people's stories that we bring in to really hold them in a way that they get to be held. So I thank Tiffany and Naima for that, because that was everything right there.
I mean, you just added to everything. I mean, that's a speech right there. We need to publish that or something. We need to get it tattooed on our bodies or just put it in our brains, make sure we know that. We are at the end of our panel. Before we go, I just want to remind people that we are in an ultra marathon, right? We're not sprinting. We're doing what Naima, Tiffany, and Viv said. We're taking this slow. We're taking care of ourselves. And I want to thank, from the bottom of our hearts, I want to thank Lauren, Chinyere, Andrea, for all of their admin work to help us get to this point, to help us take a pause, to get us here to talk about the work, the important work that we all are doing. I want to thank all of the youth researchers, the people who supervise the youth researchers. I want to thank all Healing Justice folks. I want to thank our co-lead researchers for staying in this project and doing it and being dedicated to liberation. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to our interpreters. So much gratitude. So go drink some water, breathe, and take care of yourselves. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.